Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin in the Yukon, where the Yukon Territorial Court has issued a decision that could be precedent-setting. A Yukon man pleaded guilty to manslaughter for selling drugs to a woman who fatally overdosed. He was sentenced yesterday. Virginie Ann has the story.
Jared Skookum is the first drug dealer to receive a sentence in relation to a fatal overdose in the Yukon. On Monday, Judge Michael Cousins ordered the 34-year-old man to 2 years less a day behind bars with credit for time already served, as well as a 3-year probation order. The court case revealed that Skookum sold drugs to Stephanie Pai in April 2022. Pai was later found dead in a White Horse hotel room. She overdosed from the drugs she bought from Skookum. Traces of fentanyl were found in her blood. Pai was 36. During the sentencing, Cousins acknowledged that this type of case is challenging to navigate. On one hand, Skookum has been struggling with addiction himself, the result of a difficult upbringing that included intergenerational trauma. But Skookum was aware of the potential impact of the drugs he sold. According to documents filed in court, Skookum and Pai had partied together a few weeks before she died. At that time, they both overdosed but survived. This was considered an aggravating factor in sentencing. However, the judge recognized that Skookum showed remorse. Skookum has already served his full sentence while awaiting for the decision, but he remains in custody for other unrelated charges. Virginie Ann, CBC News, Whitehorse.
A man in Inuvik is dead, and RCMP have charged 2 women with second-degree murder. Police found the body of a 39-year-old man behind a building early Sunday morning. They believe it to be a homicide, though the details are protected by a publication ban. 24-year-old Annabelle Edwards and 20-year-old Felicia Ilanik have been charged in relation to the death. They've also been charged with interfering with human remains. They remain in custody and are expected to appear in court on September 3rd. A hunter that went missing from Baker Lake, Nunavut, has been found. John Oklaga was found outside the community 9 days after he went missing. Baker Lake Search and Rescue says Oklaga was found in good health. He was reportedly very responsive and walking under his own power. Multiple search teams were involved in locating the hunter. Mining companies in the area also provided 2 aircraft to help with the search. Rio Tinto is 2 years away from ending production at its Diavik diamond mine in the Northwest Territories. Once that happens, it'll move into the closure phase. It's something mine officials say they've been preparing for since before production even began. The CBC's Leni Lambrink has the story.
They say diamonds are forever, but here at Lac de Gras, forever is coming to an end.
So every mine has a finite life, and we've come to the end of our economic ore bodies.
The WIC-KZ Land and Water Board hasn't approved Rio Tinto's final closure and reclamation plan for Diavik yet. But already, the company has a good sense of what it'll look like when the last buildings are torn down. A clear enough picture to build 3D models of it. Equipment will be hauled away, hazardous material moved off-site. Some places where processed kimberlite is stored have already been covered. This is the A21 pit, one of 3 that'll eventually be filled back up with water. The process will be slow. Water will be siphoned in using pipes over a period of 6 to 8 months. Once the pits are full and the water has been tested, the dikes holding back Lac de Gras will be partially removed.
And hopefully when people come across this in another 100, 200 years, that it just looks like part of the landscape.
Hopefully my kids, grandkids will come here to this site and one day say I worked here, and with my family coming up here, going hunting, fishing.
Divic's closure manager has worked for the mine for more than a decade. An NWT resident himself, he wants to leave behind a positive legacy, but he also worries for the NWT's economic future.
Divic is an economic powerhouse. We know that we do need some investment and further development in the resource space. I'm not sure what that is, so in the absence of that, I'm definitely a little apprehensive post commercial operations.
Divic is slated to end production in 2026. The closure phase is expected to last 3 years, a big logistical undertaking that will also involve trying to sell off or salvage bits of the mine's infrastructure. The chief operating officer says the last thing to go will be the mine's airstrip. Then there will be a period of scientific and traditional monitoring. It's unclear how long that will last. Lainey Lambrink, CBC News, Lac de Gras.
The city of Yellowknife proposed several changes to its taxi bylaw yesterday, but rideshare services like Uber and Lyft still seem a long way off for the NWT capital. The CBC's Nadir Hashmi explains.
Uber says it doesn't have any immediate plans to start services in Yellowknife. The city had discussions with the rideshare company. They say they want to be regulated at the territorial level. This is to avoid complications they are experiencing in other regions.
Her logic was that she's getting called across, 5 municipalities in Ontario, and it requires changes to their software, the minute you drive across a city border, and that's just not feasible for them.
While Johnson did not receive any meaningful response from Lyft or other rideshare companies, he says if Uber were to come to the NWT, it would require the Minister of Infrastructure to establish a legislative framework. The city also proposed safety changes, including requiring security cameras in all taxis and allowing drivers to request a maximum $30 deposit before the trip. Next, the city will hire a consultant to engage taxi companies, drivers, passengers, and the public on proposed changes to the taxi bylaw.
Look forward to the engagement with our stakeholders and the public at large and see what comes back from that.
Work on this is expected to be done by the end of this year. Nadir Hashmi, CBC News, Yellowknife.
It's now going to cost more to appeal developments in Yellowknife, but not as much as it might have cost. Last night, Yellowknife City Council passed a motion to increase the fee for appeals. That motion came from developer and councillor Rob Warburton. Last month, he suggested raising the fee from $25 to $2,500, partly to reduce what he saw as frivolous appeals. But councillors brought that down to $400 at yesterday's meeting. Councillor Ben Hendrickson argued that a $2,500 fee would be too high for many.
To me, $2,500 is sort of swinging the pendulum completely in the opposite direction from where we are now. And there's examples from other cities in this country that's something more reasonable for residents, that still allows access to a democratic process, but gut checks people appropriately. And ultimately, as I said, there's more issues here than just a fee that's really clogging up the development process. And those are the things that we really need to be tackling.
Yellowknife Mayor Rebecca Alty noted that the increase ensures public access to justice. A subsidy for low-income families for the fee will be introduced at a later date. The Yukon Quest has introduced a new trail for the 2025 race. The historic dog sled race will now start February 2nd in Teslin, about 170 kilometers southeast of Whitehorse, though there will be a ceremonial start in Whitehorse on February 1st. Tori Fitzpatrick reports.
For the first time, the 2025 Yukon Quest Trail will not follow the Yukon River. The new 425-mile overland course will take mushers from Teslin to Faro and back. A shorter 175-mile race will end in Ross River. Ann Taylor says climate change has caused safety concerns in recent years.
We've dealt with open water for the past 3 years, especially I know that people saw it last year with the open water around Shipyards Park and coming out of Whitehorse. And there was a lot of open water all the way to the Dawson Trail. So it wasn't just the Yukon River, it was also the Takini River.
Last year's Yukon Quest was cut short due to poor trail conditions. Aaron Peck, a long-distance dog musher, was a handler in last year's race. He says the change is a positive one for mushers.
I think it reignites the interest for the mushers to dream about exploring a new terrain, a new part of the Yukon that we haven't seen before. A lot of us haven't seen before. And I think that's exciting. And I think it's okay. I like it.
Organizers are hoping to reconnect the 2026 Yukon Quest Trail to Dawson and Pelly. Tori Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Whitehorse.
The Yukon Star has closed its doors due to insufficient revenue. The newspaper announced the decision on Sunday. It's been less than 4 months since the paper launched, following the closure of the Whitehorse Star in May. It printed weekly and had daily news online. Publisher Max Fraser says the journalism world has changed, but there's still room for print.
Media market of the world has changed with the advent of the social media giants, etc. But there's still a role for print. There's still a role for online news that's supported by advertising, but it also needs to be supported by other revenue streams. That includes, just direct gifts and support from people in the community in the form of donations, as well as online subscriptions and that sort of thing.
Journalists working with the Star had more than 100 years of combined experience serving their communities. The building used by the company has since removed all signage from doors and windows. The final day of publication for the Yukon Star was last Friday. On the East Coast, Post Media has officially completed a $1 million purchase of Atlantic Canada's biggest newspaper chain, Saltwire Network Incorporated. Among the papers purchased in the deal are PEI's The Guardian and the Journal Pioneer. Post Media says both papers will continue to publish as usual, but some of the paper's staff are still left wondering what this change in ownership means for them. Steve Bruce explains.
Guardian reporter Stu Neatby calls it some good news after months of worry about the newspaper's future. The paper's now former owner Saltwire filed for creditor protection last March. Staff on PEI moved to working from home. And last week, Newfoundland's only daily newspaper that's also part of the Post Media sale announced its print edition would become a weekly.
I think everybody's, dealt with a lot of stress, a lot of uncertainty. And just a lot of questions in the last number of months. And it for a number of non-editorial staff, it's still, uncertainty for we don't know how long.
That's because the newspaper's other PEI staff, the dozens who work in areas like sales, finance, and customer service, have not been given any guarantees. Some have already been laid off. Post Media has told others they will be kept on during a transition period, though it's not clear what happens after that. Tracy Goody, who's worked in sales for 29 years, is trying to remain optimistic.
This will be my fourth owner for the Journal and the Guardian. We seem to adapt and keep going. We're in an evolution with print media, but it's so important to keep people local and keep jobs local.
For the viability of a paper like this, to have sort of people who are responsive to subscribers, to advertisers, businesses, to have many layers of local copy editors who are checking for sort of local place names, that kind of thing. We need the staff here. We need the non-editorial support to keep it running.
Now, we did reach out to Post Media to try to find out more about its long-term plans here on PEI, though we didn't hear back. The company did post a note online to its readers today. It said that while change is difficult, the company is committed to making sure its new publications in this region are successful. Steve Bruce, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Imagine how good the TV's gonna look now. And spoiler alert.
No! Don't panic.
Don't panic.
Cut to. Well, we're not cutting to.
What do ladies want to watch?
Look out! It's drama.
Oh.
I'm ready for it.
Triple. Homicide accepted.
Everything all right here?
Yeah. Is there a problem?
We got a call about a disturbance.
I just think there's something really off about this guy.
I've lived through today, this day, before. I need you to believe me and tell me I'm not completely crazy.
What would you be prepared to do?
You have one more chance.
Anything.
Welcome to Plan B Agency. Select your desired destination.
Breaking news that shapes your world. With local CBC Radio 1 Live to connect us closer to home. It's news you can trust, delivered when you want, where you want. On the CBC News app. Download for free.
Imagine how good the TV's gonna look now.
Oh, God!
This is incredible.
Did you know this?
As if.
Could the pressure be any higher?
Moments that are so on trend right now. Ticket pricing, artificial intelligence, being a Swiftie. Commotion, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
A new law is now in effect in Australia. It gives most people the right to ignore business calls and emails outside of work hours. There's a push for the same right to disconnect in Canada, but some experts warn it likely won't make much of a difference. Angie Seth looks at how it works.
The right to disconnect has arrived in Australia. The new law allowing employees to ignore work emails and calls after work hours will apply to all businesses with 15 or more employees. The change was made in an effort to promote work-life balance.
When you are disconnected with work, you are kind of disconnected with a lot of stress, anxiety, and all those deadlines and all those kind of things.
The law isn't absolute. Employers can still call, and there are some cases that are considered reasonable. Similar rules are in place in more than 20 other countries around the world.
This budget is about fairness for every generation.
And Canada is looking to get on board, introducing a plan in the last federal budget. Ontario is the only province to give workers the right to disconnect, requiring companies with more than 25 employees to have a written policy.
It sounds good, but it's a bit of an empty policy.
Enforcement, still an issue according to this labor lawyer.
The law doesn't actually tell employers that they have to mandate that employees disconnect between certain periods. So without that level of guidance, employers are free to draft these policies in any way they see fit.
Though some say change is coming either way, with younger generations demanding it.
It's very clear that the younger workforce wants to establish more clear boundaries between work and outside of work life.
And some of those younger workers say employers who don't listen could face consequences.
I'm done at 3:30, so for your information, I'm not going to message you back. Even if I see my messages, you're going to be on Do Not Disturb.
It should be available as an option, and it's definitely an appealing tactic that employers can use to attract any applicants.
Canada's plan is still a ways away, with work to be done to update the labor code. Even then, it'll only affect federally regulated workers, leaving it up to the provinces and territories to make their own call. Angie Seth, CBC News, Toronto.
A Sunny Rayak man who is battling cancer wants better health services in all Nunavut communities. He says everyone should get equal treatment regardless of where they live. Solomon Nasuk was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in March after getting a CT scan in Iqaluit. He was then sent to Ottawa, where he's been ever since. The pain from his cancer, however, started earlier, in December. He didn't get it checked back then because it would have meant a costly trip out of his community. Nasuk wishes smaller health centers like the one in Sunny Rayak had more resources, like a basic CT scanner.
There's many of us that were detected too late and were in stage 4 already and not treatable by the time they find out.
CBC has reached out to Nunavut's Minister of Health, John Main, for comment. He wasn't made available today. Health officials in the U.S. are reporting the deaths of 2 people from a rare virus. It's spread by mosquitoes and usually affects horses, but it can spread to humans. 1 person has died in New Hampshire, along with a man in Massachusetts. Allison Northcott has more on the illness and the risks here at home.
Several towns in Massachusetts are now critical risk zones for a serious mosquito-borne illness.
I don't know if I wouldn't go out. I'd probably just wear long pants and long sleeves.
Communities across the U.S. state are trying to prevent the spread of eastern equine encephalitis after a rare case was reported in a man in his 80s.
Headache, a fever, but because of the inflammation of the brain, you can have a decreased level of consciousness and seizures.
Infectious disease specialists say it can be dangerous and deadly.
It's a pretty catastrophic infection. It can cause a very, very severe syndrome of encephalitis, which means inflammation of the brain, and it carries a rather high mortality rate.
Officials in Massachusetts are spraying widely, some towns closing parks and fields and urging residents to avoid outdoor activities during peak mosquito hours from dusk until dawn.
Please don't do this to our kids.
800 people signed a petition. Health Canada says the last reported human case of the disease in this country was in 2016. But health officials in the city of Ottawa say a horse there recently tested positive. So they're encouraging residents to use insect repellent, wear light-colored long pants and long sleeves, make sure windows and doors have screens, and remove or empty standing water sites around your home. The virus has no cure or vaccine for humans, but Canadians shouldn't panic, says this expert.
Outbreaks of this particular disease in the United States and in New England seem to be only very small handfuls of cases.
Canada's public health agency monitors mosquito-borne diseases, but it says unlike West Nile virus, human cases of eastern equine encephalitis don't have to be reported to the agency, and there's no formal surveillance system in place. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
First, it was self-checkout. Now, self-bagging has become a growing trend in Canada's grocery stores. A CBC News investigation reveals both the stores and the customers are contributing to the change. Sophia Harris has the details.
Cashiers at this small grocery chain do the bagging, even when customers bring their own bags.
We're a very traditional grocery store. We scan everything for the customer, we bag it, we take it out to their car.
But at many grocery stores, there now appears to be an expectation customers bag their own goods, even in the cashier lane.
Did you guys pack your own groceries today?
Yes, we did. That's the norm now.
It became the norm over the past several years, following government regulations banning plastic bags, prompting shoppers to bring their own.
So once we have our own bags, I think the idea is just to pack it ourselves.
But some shoppers aren't happy with the shift. There are dozens of complaints on social media questioning why cashiers at major grocery stores like Loblaws, Sobeys, and Walmart aren't automatically packing customers' goods.
They just expect you to do it.
How do you feel about that?
Well, it's ridiculous. Like, what am I getting 5% off? Am I getting anything?
Sophia Berdusis worked as a Loblaws cashier during the plastic bag era, so she bagged everyone's groceries.
It used to be part of the grocery experience, and now I feel like it's just one more thing that they're taking away. You know, they're raising prices, we're getting less.
Sobeys told CBC News its bagging services depend on the store, region, and staffing. Walmart and Loblaws say their cashiers are happy to help with the bagging. But some experts say cashier lineups do move faster when customers do their own bagging, which means grocers can hire less staff.
I think we're being trained not to expect bagging, and we've sort of fallen into that trap. Largely, I think this is a labor-based initiative. The real incentive is to get you through as quickly as possible so that we can serve the next customer.
So if you want your groceries bagged, choose a store that automatically offers it, or buck the trend by asking for help. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
Team Canada has announced its flag bearers for tomorrow's opening ceremony of the Paris Paralympic Games. And they are champion swimmer Katarina Roxon, who is competing in her 5th Games, and wheelchair basketball star Patrick Anderson, who is in his 6th and final Games. The two will lead Canada's parade of Paralympic athletes. Roxon has 1 Paralympic gold and 1 bronze. Anderson has 3 golds and 1 silver. The country's Paralympic team has 126 members. Canada won 21 medals at the last Games in Tokyo. And you can watch the Paris Paralympics opening ceremony tomorrow starting at 1:30 p.m. Eastern on CBC TV. You can also, of course, stream it on CBC Gem and the CBC Paris 2024 app. Around 3,000 lightning strikes have hit parts of Nunavut in the past week. These are pictures from a stormy Sunday evening in Arviat. Holy, check that out. It's not the only Nunavut community seeing big storms like this as well. Over the past week, a low-pressure system with wind and rain has brushed parts of Nunavut after hitting the prairies. August tends to be the stormiest month in Nunavut. Environment and Climate Change Canada says more of that can be expected with climate change.
That's kind of how we're going to start to see things on a tangible weather forecast sense, is more of these extremes. So bigger storm systems that move through, so stronger winds, more precipitation, potentially more thunderstorm activity depending on the time of year. But also extreme cold isn't going to go away either.
Over the past 5 days, Kudlik Energy Corporation has reported outages in several communities across the territory due to broken poles. It linked high winds and bad weather to outages in Arviat and Rankin Inlet. Now, let's take a look at the weather. And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
Why, hello.
You want it? I got it. This is so cool.
Focus, focus, focus.
Here we go. Ooh, imagine how good the TV's gonna look now.
Oh, God!
This is incredible.
Did you know this?
As if.
Could the pressure be any higher?
I'm such a fan of this show.
Listen to the podcast, Q with Tom Power.
The story itself is so unbelievable.
The industry wasn't set up for me to thrive in.
The presence I feel now is not something that I believed to be possible in the past.
So many people thought I couldn't do it. They doubted me.
Felt like I ripped my whole heart out.
I didn't realize how formative 25 to 30 would be.
I have to kind of repress my own self-doubt.
You're one of my favorite interviewers, so I was pumped.
Get out of here.
Q with Tom Power. Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi. Yeah, you can come on over.
I'll be right there.
You're here. I feel better already.
It's got to come from the heart.
I will cry. You're so together. Spicy.
Now we're all just getting the sillies.
How much more connected do you want to be?
Yeah.
Is this a team meeting? Because I'm part of the team.
See you there.
I've lived through today, this day, before. What would you be prepared to do if you had one more chance?
Anything.
Welcome to Plan B Agency. Select your desired destination.
Physical activity helps you feel younger, so you can age better. Everything gets better when you get active.